Good morning, Louisville. Listen up. This is Lyndon Pryor, Louisville Urban League President and CEO. Welcome again to our special edition of the Listen Up podcast, the Power Shift podcast, where we are coming to you briefly, as often as possible, to talk about the issues that matter, particularly as it pertains to voter turnout and voter engagement. There is a lot going on in the world. There's a lot going on in the city. And we are interested in getting people to the polls because that is our greatest power in this moment. There's a lot of things that we want to see change. There's a lot of things that we want to see done. And we want to make sure that we exercise our most powerful voice, which right now is our vote. And so while we still have it, we want to use it as much as we can and to the greatest extent that we can. And so that is why we are doing these podcasts, is to help people understand how the vote matters, why it matters, and how do we engage our elected officials moving forward. I will always say that we want you to pledge to vote. Up there in the top corner of the screen, you will see a QR code. Click the QR code and join with us. Tell us that you are going to use your voice and you are going to use your vote. Pledge to vote with us and join that campaign. You can find out more at lul.org/vote. But hopping into today's cast, we have joined with me is Felicia Newman, who's the Director for Justice and Policy Initiatives here at the Louisville Urban League. Y'all have seen her before. And somebody else who is also a friend of the league and a familiar face to everybody around this community, Miss Amber Duke, who leads the ACLU Kentucky. Thank you, Felicia and Amber, for joining us. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about, beyond the vote, the power of proximity, what it means to actually engage our elected officials. Amber, thank you for joining us. Tell us why this is such an important part of our civic engagement.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, when Felicia asked me to think about a topic that I care about or that I'm passionate about around voting, it was really important for me to
Uh-oh, Amber, it looks like we're having some.
Oh, here we are. Are we back?
Yes, now we can hear you. Good.
Okay, great. I'm gonna start again because I don't know where it stopped. But I was saying, thank you so much for having me. Felicia asked me to come and talk about something that I'm passionate about in the realm of voting. And so not only for voting, but engaging elected leaders, as you said, Lyndon, our voice is truly our power. And I think that in the work that we do at the ACLU of Kentucky, we're doing a lot of advocacy work. We are constantly asking for folks to both engage their elected leaders, but also when we are in an election season, we want to encourage folks to engage candidates for office as well. And a lot of times we hear, I leave voicemails, I never hear anything back. Doesn't matter if I send an email, doesn't matter if I send a postcard. We're asking people to show up to testify, we're asking people to sign petitions, and folks are tired. They have a lot of things to do, and people truly feel like their voice does not matter. And there's nothing that could be further from the truth. I think, I have seen every single legislative session that we work on, Metro Council meetings. I just think we can never allow our elected leaders, we can never allow anyone who's running for office to be able to have the talking point to say, I didn't hear from anyone, or I'm moving this issue forward, or I'm moving forward from this perspective because I haven't heard it. I haven't heard from anyone in my district. I'm only hearing from the ACLU about this. I'm only hearing from the Urban League about this, but I'm not hearing from any of my constituents about this. And of course, we know, right? We know that folks care and that they're passionate. But if that information is not getting to the folks who are running for office or to our elected leaders, it allows them to move forward in a way that might not be the direction that we want to go. So I just think I always say, to people that ask, what can I do? And, when I say send an email or make a phone call and they sort of roll their eyes, I'm like, no, this is important. This actually changes debate that happens at Metro Council, that happens on the floor of the Kentucky General Assembly, when we can take away that talking point of, quote, I haven't heard from anyone about this.
And let me tell you how it really does matter. I've only been doing this work for about 3.5 years, but I have been there long enough to see the Kentucky legislature do something that is, it stifles debate, because what they try to do now, so we can't engage them and can't talk to them, is they drop bills at midnight and then hear them at 8 a.m. the next day. And they do that so they don't hear opposition, so they can use the talking point that Amber talked about. I'm not sure why they decide. I mean, if the effect is us not being able to engage, so it does matter, because if it didn't matter, they wouldn't try to take it away. So you always have to think about, why is somebody doing something? Like, you always have to have in your mind, what is the purpose and what is the intended outcome? So, speaking to them, they don't want to hear what ACLU or the Urban League has, or the constituents that we bring. Because we don't just talk ourselves. Amber doesn't talk herself. I don't normally talk myself. Lyndon doesn't. We try to get people, like the people on the street, the people on the ground floor with these issues, to come talk to them. And they don't want to hear it. So we have to continue to send the emails, make the calls, show up in their offices. Let's talk about that, Amber. Showing up at their office.
Yeah, for sure. I think that people would be very surprised to hear how little elected officials are engaged. I think that it can make a significant difference for folks who call the legislative message line, for example. It generates call slips that go to offices. And so folks can see, oh, hey, there are green slips, and this is how many people are calling in support of the bill. They're red slips. Here's how many people are calling. If a legislator gets 2 or 3 folks during a legislative session that show up in person and want to, meet with them in their office on a particular bill, that gets some attention. It really takes, I think, a lot less than people imagine in order for an issue to kind of, move to the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think the old saying is politics is a contact sport, and it's not that is intended to be in violent in any sorts of way, but it does require people getting engaged and actually making contact with the folks who have power. It is things do not simply end on election night, right? Like, the real work actually begins thereafter, and that is the process of us holding people accountable. I think so. So Amber, you talking about, on one side there is this notion that does this really matter, and does it make a difference? And I think we can clearly state from our own experiences that it does. And legislators have said that when we are overwhelmed by contact from constituents, it does have an impact on what we do. And there are lots of examples of that at every single level of government. But on the other side, there is also, I think, for some individuals, a bit of anxiety, right? Like, there is kind of a fear or concern around, like, well, what do I say? How do I do this? I mean, this is somebody who's elected. They're so important. What exactly am I supposed to say to them? And so how do we help people, or what do you say to folks to help them overcome, some sort of anxiety around accessing and contacting their elected official?
I'll say 2 things. First, before I respond to that, I do want, you talked about the work doesn't stop just at the election. And I'll also say this period of time that we are currently in terms of state level politics, what is known as the interim, right? Our legislators meet in Frankfurt, essentially January through April. The number of days depends on what type of session that we're in. There are interim committee hearings that are happening. meaning there are committees from the House and the Senate that are meeting together to do studies, to have more in-depth conversation. They have more time during this interim time period than they have during the legislative session itself for deeper conversations about the issues, but also for meetings with their constituents. And also, this is the time period that folks are usually at home in their district. So we have, we're a statewide organization. We have folks around the state that say, like, hey, I live in Paducah. It's hard for me to get to Frankfort for the rallies and for these days. This is the time of year to be meeting in district with your legislators and having those conversations. To this piece about the nervousness, I totally get that. And so, sometimes this is a team sport, right? We've been doing what we call mini lobby days, where we will have groups of 3 or 4 people who will come together to do a meeting with their elected official. We do a lot of training for folks. So we sort of demystify the process. This is how a meeting should go. Here are some talking points about the issue. But at the end of the day, the thing that is most compelling and what the areas around where most connection happens is when people who are directly impacted by the issue are speaking about their own story. And so, we have policy strategists, we have me, I can go to Frankfurt and I can have meetings and I can talk about the constitutional arguments. I can talk about, the ways that if a particular thing is going to move forward, it might cause some problems and we might have to file a lawsuit at the ACLU. But there is nothing like a person who is a constituent from a district talking about their story, how they have been impacted by what has or has not happened in order to move an issue forward. So, we just were able to work with a lot of coalition partners around Family Preservation and Accountability Act. And we had Brittany and Gavin Harrington, a mother who was incarcerated, who talked about her time incarcerated, the separation from her son during that time, and her son, now an adult, talking about the impact on him as a child. With his mom incarcerated, and how if we had this policy in place, the difference it would have made for his childhood. That is very real. It's very true. It's more compelling than any facts and figures, that I can share. And so you are the you that we're talking to out there, you all are, we just try to tell people there's not a lot of prep. You don't have to, be an expert. You don't have to memorize the facts and figures. Let us do the legal stuff. Let us get into the weeds of the policy, but you are an expert on your own story.
Absolutely. You're on mute, Felicia.
I'm trying to be respectful, and I'm sorry. So I think it's great that you mentioned that, Amber, because the Urban League does the same thing. And if you want to, people out there listening, if you want to be one of those volunteers to tell your story to an elected official, contact the Urban League at policy at lul.org. That's policy at lul.org. That email will get to me and my team. And, we can sit down and talk with you, just like Amber said, demystify, give you talking points, and we'll take you to Metro Council. We'll take you to the Kentucky State Legislature. We'll take you anywhere you want to go and tell the stories that are important to you, so we can let elected officials know that you are out there and you have issues and you want to talk about them.
Yeah, I think the other point that I love to highlight is, particularly for folks who may have some anxiety around talking to elected officials, is that our elected officials are just people. And, not all of them are that bright as well. Like they run the gamut, right? Like we have some great folks who mean well. And we have some other folks who are just there because, quite frankly, nobody else ran against them. They are just people. They are just like everybody else. There's nothing special or super about any of them, which means there should be no fear or concern about engaging these people just because they sit behind the big desk. And I mean this from Metro Council all the way to Washington, D.C. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm sure Amber is 2-3 times a year, so engaging with elected officials at every rung of the ladder. And the fact is there's nobody that you should be scared of. There's nobody that you should be scared to talk to, because they are just human beings. Now, some of them have been around for a long time, and they use, fancy words and like to throw around jargon and all of that sort of stuff to confuse people or to misdirect things. But to your point, Amber, you are the experts on your own story, and nobody's going to be able to tell you better than you what your lived experience is and how policies and issues actually directly affect you and those in your community. And so you should always walk strongly and proudly into rooms with elected officials and know that you were just as capable and just as experienced to be there as possible. So we are coming up on time, and I guess I'll ask this finally of you, Amber, in terms of where do people start, right? Like, so for some people, this may be the new, the first time that they're hearing this, or the first time they're really considering around, like, all right, how do I get engaged directly with my representatives at whatever level? Where should people begin?
I would say a few things. I mean, I think that folks, number one, a lot of people don't know who their elected officials are. And so, there are all sorts of ways that you can go online, Kentucky General Assembly, Metro Council, figure out what district you're in and find out who your elected officials are. Most of these folks have Facebook pages. A lot of these folks have newsletters that they send out. Go ahead and get signed up for those. Reach out, just say hello. Say send a message on Facebook, send an email, say I'm a constituent in your district. I live here, there. These are the things I care about. We've found just from simple outreach, a lot of times elected officials will reach out and say, oh, do you want to grab a coffee, or do you want to come? I'm doing a legislative debrief in the neighborhood. Why don't you come out? So there are ways to make connections. If there are particular issues that you care about. So if, you're, concerned about, let's say, the consent decree, the community commitment, for example, there are organizations like the ACLU, the Urban League, Black, KFTC that are working on these issues. Connect with organizations that are doing that work. And I will tell you that we have many ways for you to plug in. So there may be upcoming events we can plug you into. I think we've shared information about signing up to volunteer for the Urban League. If you go to the ACLU of Kentucky's website, you can sign up to volunteer. But probably for any issue that you can think of, there's an organization out there in Kentucky that is organized that you can connect to that will have things for you to be able to take action on and do. So I always encourage people to do that. That's an easy sort of entry. Where you branch out from there, what you might want to strike out and do on your own. But I think that if you kind of follow that path, you can get the basics that you need.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you again, Amber, for joining us. We appreciate you as always. We appreciate the ACLU of Kentucky and all of the work that you all do for our community and continue to do for our community. And family, that is Listen Up, the Power Shift podcast for this morning. Thank you all for joining us. Please like and share this so that others can learn how they can engage their elected officials. But more importantly, please join us in shifting power back into the hands of the people. In order to do that, please pledge to vote. You can do that by clicking the QR code in the corner of the screen, or visiting the QR code in the corner of your screen, or visiting lul.org/vote to join the shift. You can do it as an individual. You can do it as a community organization. We are looking to build power together. And so please join with us. We will catch you next time here on the pod. We look forward to it. Take care.